Ha 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 ha! Weekly Dartscast, the best darts podcast going. If you guys like your podcasts and you like your darts, then make sure you listen to the Weekly Dartscast. They're the purists podcast. If you listen to Alex and Burton, they talk about everything. They talk to the pros, they talk to the pros on the tour, the old BDO, they talk to management, they talk to darts manufacturers, proper interesting stuff, so give them a listen.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss and joining me as always it is the darts statistician himself, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm doing all right, thank you. It's been a busy last week in the world of darts, so we've only just managed to fit in an episode now, so lots to get to. We've got two great guests to bring you as well. David Schlichting, the Turtle, you may have seen him recently in the Modus League. He's going to be stopping by for a chat ahead of playing in the German Super League next week, plus the build-up to the PDC World Championship already underway. And calling in from America, we've got Guyana's Norman Madhoo, one of the international qualifiers, heading to Ali Pali next month. But before all of that, let's rewind to last weekend, the European Championship out in Dortmund, where Peter Wright returned to major winning ways, beating James Wade in Sunday night's final, reclaims the world number 2 position from Michael van Gerwen, and an 8th major singles title now for Snakebite, which brings us on to our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. Will Peter Wright get to 10 PDC major singles titles? What do you reckon?
It's a tough question because we've been saying for a few months now that Peter Wright's been moving in the right direction. I don't think either of us thought he was in that position to go out and win the European Championship when the week began, but I don't think either of us thought he was that far away. He certainly had performances that showed that he could beat anyone on any given day, but he hadn't strung together 5 matches like he ended up doing in Dortmund, averaging nearly 95 in coming from behind to beat Gabriel Clemens, a fantastic comeback in that match, followed by a 96 against the world champion and world number 1, nearly a ton against Chris Dobie, who I'll come on to on the next question, and then over a ton against Danny Noppert, who I'll also talk about on the next question, and then a 97 average in the final. You know, this is exactly what we've been seeing all year from people who've won these majors, those mid to high 90 averages every single match across a tournament. That's what does it. It's that consistency at a high, even if it's not absurdly high, even if it's not like the 106s that we saw from Danny Noppert in the first round. Matters Rosma was nearly doing that and ended up losing the match against Michael van Gerwen. It's not necessarily these really high averages, but it's that consistent high 90s stuff every single match that wins titles. And Peter Wright managed to do that over the weekend. And it took us a little bit by surprise just because it seemed like he was a couple points away from having that consistency before this weekend. Now he's there. And this is the time of year where over the last few years, he's really focused. You know, he's done what Phil Taylor used to do, which is to get to his best game in October and November so that he puts himself in that position to win the world title, the one thing that matters to him. A few years ago, that worked for the first time when he beat Michael van Gerwen in the world final to win his maiden world title. But then 2 years later, when he was defending all that prize money, he won the Players' Championship final, a great final that was over Ryan Searle. And he was playing his best darts in October and November leading into the World Championship, and he did it again. Now he's playing his best darts again. He is back in that conversation as a player who can win I can't say all the remaining majors because he didn't qualify for the Players' Championship finals, but he did qualify for the Grand Slam. He had already qualified for that through the World Cup final earlier this year, and now the World Championship, and he's playing at a level that can do it. That said, will he win 2 more? This was the first time in 2 years we've seen him in a televised major play at this level. He did have a good performance earlier this year in winning a World Series event, but that doesn't count. But we hadn't seen him string together a tournament like this in quite some time, since winning that World Championship 22 months ago. And it makes it seem like it's a tough ask for him to win 2 more. He absolutely could. He could win the Grand Slam and he could win the World Championship in a couple months. He's reached double figures, but I just don't know if he will. This didn't seem like a swan song performance. You know, we've seen players who pull something out of the hat when it looks like the career's going down. And we know even in that moment, this might be that last hurrah, whether it is, it's too early to tell whether James Wade is going to come back up again. But in some ways, this felt like it could be a last hurrah for James Wade because it came out of nowhere. And we don't know whether his game is where it needs to be and whether it's really moving in the right direction. I remember back almost a decade ago now when Wes Newton was having a terrible year, but then made the semifinals of the Players' Championship finals at the end of the year. He didn't look all that great in it, but he won 3 matches. That felt like a swan song, last hurrah, and it turned out it was. Following year, he started missing the major tournaments altogether. We've seen that from so many players. It didn't feel like that for Peter Wright. It felt like he's back on his game. But for how much longer? He's 53 now. He's not a spring chicken anymore. He's not even a summer chicken. He's an autumn chicken. And that could mean a few more years. Steve Beaton's almost 60. We've seen other players play their best darts well into their 50s. But it becomes harder and harder as time goes on, and maybe at some point the motivation starts to go. I think he can reach double figures. He could reach double figures by early January. He also could do it sometime next year, but he's going to have to win another major next year, and possibly 2, because I don't think he has many years left at the top. And beyond that, I don't know. I think he could, but I just don't know.
Yeah, the clock is certainly ticking for Peter Wright. And looking at the poll that our listeners are voting on at the moment, a lot of them are voting for yes, 76% saying that Peter Wright will get to the double figures of major titles, 24% are going with no. And if you'd have put this question out a week ago, I think that poll would have been a lot closer because, as you say, I don't think many people were tipping Peter Wright as a contender to win the European Championship at the weekend. And okay, he's had his moments this year. He's won titles on the World Series, the European Tour. We've seen flashes of his game coming back to where it was before, but it's a completely different thing putting it together over an event like this, over the distance of the European Championship, 4 days. And okay, the first round is a short race, first to 6 legs, but then you go straight into those best of 19s, best of 21s for the rest of it. So it is a real long format that you've got to get through, and you've got to beat the top players to do it. But Peter Wright was able to do that last week. He mentioned the comeback against Gabriel Clemens, a fairly routine win against Michael Smith, 10-4, took him through to that final day and dug deep a few times to get the job done on that Sunday. I mean, the game with Chris Dobey, I didn't manage to watch that one, but I was following the scores for the back end of it, and it looked like a thriller. Peter Wright, he opened up a decent lead. Chris Dobey came back to lead 8-7, and Peter Wright managing to turn it round, win the last 3 legs to come through 10-8. And earlier in that game, there was some flashy checkouts, the 1-6-4, the 1-6-7. But the game for me that made me sit up and think that Peter Wright is a major contender again was the closing stages of that semi-final with Danny Noppert. He was 8-5 down. We'd just seen Noppert take out a 1-4-3 at a 75, 1 dart in hand at a double. And what does Peter Wright do? Responds by winning 6 legs in a row to win it 11-8. And what impressed me the most in those 6 legs was the scoring power from Peter. I think it was 15 scores above 120, a lot of 140s, a couple of 180s in there, but it was that sustained level of scoring during those last 6 legs. And looking back, those last 6 legs, his first 9 average 126 during that spell. Danny's was 96, and this is a match where Noppert was 8 out of 11 on the doubles, so 72-73%. He was taking pretty much all the chances that he was getting. So Peter Wright did need that scoring power to get back into the game and give him some chances to get over the line. So yeah, he's up to 8 major titles now. This is probably one of the most unexpected of those major titles that we've seen Peter Wright get, but 2 away, you've got to think there's going to be more chances coming his way. And as you say, he's not going to be in the Players' Championships in a few weeks' time, so missing majors, that's not going to help his cause. But I think you've got to look at the record that Peter Wright's got in major finals recently. This is someone that he lost 12 of his first 13 major singles finals. He's then gone on a run of winning 7 of the next 8. So if he gets to finals these days, you are more confident in Peter Wright getting the job done. So I can see Peter Wright getting to more major finals, and if he can carry on that strike rate, it does make you confident that he's going to add to that tally again. And 2 more, yeah, he's 53 now. Phil Taylor, the last major he won, he was 56, just about to turn 57. So it's a small group of players that are able to win these titles at that age, but he's just chalked off that 8th one I think he's going to get more opportunities, and I think he's going to get 2 more titles. So I'm going to go with our listeners and say, yes, he does get to that 10.
Now, it was a first major final in 2 years for James Wade. Also a breakthrough run on television for Jan van Veen, making to the semifinals. But overall, including that, what were your main takeaways from the weekend in Dortmund?
Well, I think aside from Peter Wright winning the title, which, as we said, did come as a bit of a surprise, there were 3 players that stole a lot of the headlines for me. And you mentioned 2 of them there, James Wade, Jan van Veen, and I'll throw Ricardo Pietrexco into the mix, someone that we have spoken a lot about over the last few weeks. But starting off with James Wade, who had a fairly quiet passage to the final day, beaten out of sorts Dirk van Dijvenbode 6-3, then Jose de Souza 10-1. But it was a very impressive performance against Luke Humphries in that quarterfinals. You were going up against someone there in Luke Humphries looking for back-to-back major titles. We'd just seen him win that first one at the World Grand Prix, but Wade had other ideas. 98 average, 3 ton-plus checkouts, 10 out of 16 on the doubles, and looking at his throw as well, 7 out of 8 times he held throw, and only the other 7 legs that Luke didn't win against the Wade throw, he only had 1 dart at a double, which tells you a lot about how strong James Wade was on his throw, and he was able to manage that game pretty comfortably in the end. And in the semi-final as well, I think we saw a lot of the 20 plus years experience we've seen of James Wade playing in these big games, big situations to pull a result out of the bag. It's got to be said, because Xi'an looked in control for a lot of that game. 5-1 up, there was the 347 in 6 darts, the 180, the 167 finish. He went 6-4 up, 8-6 up, 9-7 up. But those last 4 legs of the game, he only got 1 dart at a double. And yeah, I think it really was that experience of James Wade that came through in the end to pull a result out of the bag. And that has got him into the Grand Slam. He didn't have to go to the qualifiers today when we're recording, so it's another event that James Wade's going to be involved in. And maybe it was the last hurrah for James Wade, but I think there's a lot that he can build on from that run, especially the win against Luke Humphries, the comeback against Jan van Veen. And I mentioned Jan there, how his run ended, but he certainly impressed as well. The 107 average in the first round to beat Damon Heta, who didn't play badly himself. He then got past Daryl Gurney, Michael van Gerwen to make that final session. And maybe looking at the other side of things, to talk about Wade's experience in those big games, maybe it just was a little bit of an experience that saw him see that semi-final slip away. But I'm sure there's going to be more major semi-finals in the future for Jan van Veen, and that run has helped him move into that top 64. He's up to, I think, number 52 now, less than a year into his tour card. And we spoke about it before, the money that he picked up last year without a tour card that would have put him in contention for a lot of other events this year. If you add that money on, he would be looking very close to that top 40 now. So that tells you the player that he is already, with just a limited time on tour. And as well as Jan van Veen, we've got to give a brief mention as well to Ricardo Pietrexco as well, because we did wonder how he was going to perform first time back on stage since winning that Euro Tour. And what does he do? Knocks out the defending champion Ross Smith, 104 average, and then he pushes Van Gerwen close in round 2, losing out 10-7. But again, I think there's a lot of positives that he can take against someone with a lot of experience that we're going to see. He's going to gain that in these major events coming up, because he is going to be in the Grand Slam. He's going to Minehead, he's going to Ali Pali, and by the looks of it, he's a player that just seems to be getting better and better.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much to take out of the weekend, because it was, we say it all the time, but it was another really, really high quality tournament. Even though there weren't that many last leg deciders, there weren't any after the first round. There were a couple in the first round. Those were fantastic matches. You know, Peter Wright coming back from 5-1 down to beat Gabriel Clemens. Madars Rasmus somehow losing a match where he absolutely destroyed Michael van Gerwen. He was by far the better player in that match, missed 1 match start, and Van Gerwen nailed his to win it 6-5. But that's the best we've ever seen from Rasmus on TV. Those were the only last leg deciders, but there were a lot of other really tight matches and a lot of really good comebacks as well. Beyond Peter Wright's, you know, look at Danny Noppert, 7-0 down to Gerwin Price. Just the grit that he had, winning 10 of the next 11 legs. And what did it take for Gerwin Price to win a leg after going 7-0 up? He had to miss a dart for a 9-darter and completed the next visit. That's the only leg he won after being 7-0 up. Just a phenomenal comeback from Danny Noppert, who had a very, very good week as well. He absolutely could have beaten Peter Wright in that semifinal, and I think overall he might have been the best player at the weekend. He just ran into someone playing that little bit better in that specific match. But over the course of the 4 matches he played, he was absolutely brilliant, and he beat some very good players. Yes, okay, Andrew Gilding didn't show up in the first match, but he didn't let Gilding show up. He then beat Rob Cross, twice winner of this event, beat Curran Price from 7-0 down, and then ran Peter Wright as close as pretty much anyone after, obviously, Clemens. But, there's other players worth mentioning. And we mentioned, Jean Van Veen making the semifinals. We're going to be talking so much about him over the next decade if we keep doing this show, because he's going to be worth talking about. He is a future major champion. I'm not sure where his peak is, but it's somewhere high, because he is a phenomenal player, and I don't think he's anywhere near his best. So I want to talk, though, about one other player who might be easy to miss just how good he did, because he's been just doing really good, really well, really consistent on television all year. And that's Chris Dobie. Made the quarterfinals at the World Championships to start the year, end of last season, and then won the Masters. And we talked about it at that time. Every match mid-90s. And like I talked about for Peter Wright, like I've talked about for pretty much everyone this year that's won a major title. It's consecutive matches in those mid-90s that gets it done. But just look at what Chris Dobie has done since the Masters in the ranking majors this year. His averages in every match starting with the UK Open. 102, 96, 96, 98, 96, 91 in a double in. That's basically high 90s. 91 in a double in. Again, basically high 90s. Dropped off when he went out in the quarterfinals of the Grand Prix to an 82 for that double in. And then this week, 95, 97, 99. If you factor in that it's somewhere between 5 and 10 points added on to your average for double in, he has played in 11 ranking televised matches this year, and in 10 of them, he's averaged over 95. Only one match where he didn't manage to do that. That is phenomenal consistency. That's why he's made the quarterfinals of every ranking televised event this year, except for the UK Open, where he went out with a 96. It's not like he played poorly. Dobie's consistency on television this year has been as good, if not better, than anyone else. He is live to win the Players' Championship Finals, the Grand Slam, or the World Championship if he keeps that up, because that is the type of standard that wins tournaments. It's what Peter Wright did here. It's what he did when he won the Masters. He's live because of just how consistent he's been on television.
And now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show. He is a player that is going to be competing in the PDC Europe Super League next week for a spot at the World Championship. Here's our chat with David Schlichting. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the players in next week's PDC Europe Super League, David Schlichting. Thanks very much for the time, David. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing fine. Thanks for inviting me.
Great to have you on, and we're talking less than a week now before the start of the Super League. It's going to be your second appearance in the tournament. A coveted spot at Ali Pali is on the line once again. How are you feeling ahead of next week and that battle to get to the World Championship?
I'm feeling very well. Of course, the spot for Alexandra Palace is the main thing of the tournament, but there's 24 players there. I'm probably not one of the big favorites, but I'm not a huge outsider either. But it's not like I have any pressure to qualify or anything. I think probably a realistic goal is like quarterfinals or something. I missed that by one game last time. I think that's somewhat realistic, but if I have a good run, who knows? It's a knockout, so I'm feeling well because the Modus Super Series was a perfect preparation for that. It's 5 games every day. That's like the first group stage as well. Yeah, it's my birthday. The first day of the Super League, my birthday again, just like last year. So 5 days coming up, practicing a lot.
This is the first time that we've had you on the show. We know it's been long overdue. Let's circle back to the beginning for you in darts. Where did it all begin? How did you first discover the game?
So my dad got me a board at Christmas 2012, I think. We were watching the World Championships that year for the first time. That was my introduction to darts. And I played a bit at home every time the World was on, but I didn't really follow darts outside from that, and only played in December and January at home, not at all in the summer. And then at the Worlds 2017, so in December of 2016, I researched on the internet where to play outside of my home, because, well, I just had a bit more fun that year playing darts at home, and I wanted to improve a bit. And I found a place near my home and went there, and from then on went to tournaments every week, practiced every day for 3 years straight until COVID hit. Then I took a break for 1 year, but been back better than ever. And again, playing a tournament every week, practicing every day for almost 7 years soon to be.
And a big staple of German darts at a grassroots level is the DDV. So talk to us a little bit about the DDV, their role in darts back home, because I'm sure for you it's played a part in your development and many other players over the years.
Well, a little bit. I've played the youth system. I think that's a very good step to do if you're under 18, because you have most of the best under 18-year-olds playing there in the ranking tournaments. And I did that, and I did well there. I was number 1 in that ranking when COVID hit, which would have been my last year anyway. But the men's side and the ladies' side is a bit more, well, the German Darts Federation has really struggled with stuff like corruption and everything, and the tournaments are not to the highest standard in terms of organization, and they've been cancelled a few times, so I'm not bothering with the men's side there at the moment. It's not like they have massive prize money on offer either. I'm usually better off playing local stuff, which is organized privately, than traveling 8 hours all the way through Germany to play in a tournament that has 64 entrants as well, when my local tournament has 64 entrants every time.
No, it definitely makes sense, and you're still only 20 years old now, but in 2019 we saw you go to Q School, start to play on the development tour, the PDC side of things for the first time. You must have just been around 16 at the time, so what were those experiences like at an early age?
Yeah, actually I had to wait. You can't enter PDC tournaments younger than that. So I went to a European Tour qualifier back when the tour card holders were still forced to go to the European Tour places before the system changed a bit. As a guest, when I was, I think, 14, might have been 15 already. That was the first time I ever actually was there at a PDC event, and I really wanted to be there as a player next time. Immediately did that 2 months after my 16th birthday was Q School, and I played all the qualifiers, played most of the Dev Tour. But of course, after that break during COVID, I really started playing everything. So last year I've played everything. This year I've played everything apart from the Challenge Tour weekend last week, because I tried to get the best preparation for the Super League, and I just felt the Challenge Tour weekend, the last one, wasn't really needed for that. But yeah, I'm 20 now, but a lot of the time when I'm playing someone on the Dev Tour who's older than me, or even on a Challenge Tour, I feel I've got more experience playing PDC darts, because all those, quite frankly, poor performances in 2019, for example, really got me used to that. So when I started playing better, it wasn't a new feeling being on a PDC tournament.
Well, not long after that, we have the pandemic, which shuts down a lot of darts, and you mentioned that you had a little bit of a break during that time as well. Were you still playing at home or a local level, or did you just take a complete break from the game at that time?
No, not at all. I didn't touch the dart for 10 months or so. I entered Q School at the start of 2021 without any practice in a few months prior, but I played poorly, and I just entered it for the sake of it if I decided to go on with darts again, but I didn't for 2021. And then at the end of 2021, December, I started practicing again, and I moved in with my girlfriend. I started feeling a lot better mentally as well, and started practicing regularly, entered Q school, and from then on I played everything again. And of course I qualified for European Tour 2 months later, which was wild. But I think that really got me motivated to keep at it.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned that Euro Tour last year, a big milestone for you making your debut. How special was that moment, getting to walk out on stage and playing an event like that? You said you went to watch one, and then a few years later you're on that stage playing.
Yeah, very special, because of course I'm a darts player, but I'm also a massive fan. You see, I never miss a session of European Tour darts, so the only reason I'd miss one is because I'm playing in it. That's quite an experience as well, having people commentate on you, and just people who've watched me at the Super Series probably noticed that I like playing in front of cameras. I wasn't actually all that nervous at the European Tour game, but I didn't play too well either. I think to this day it's still my worst average in all of, like, in front of cameras. I've played 27 games at the Modus last week. 2 weeks ago, I always topped that average. I've played 24 games at the Super League last year. I've always topped it, but still, it helped me, like, getting the feeling of wanting to be back on that stage. Definitely.
And you mentioned as well you're a big darts fan. We can see that from your social media, and off the hockey you've grown a following as well. The people on darts Twitter, what's it like having their support behind you as well?
That's really nice. It means a lot. Whenever I'm done with a weekend or a game that was an achievement or whatever, I'm going to post about it, because I know a lot of people will react to it. It's like, during game I don't think about it too much, but between games I think of my family watching at home. I know that they follow my games closely, and that helps me already. But then knowing that there's another whole lot of people following my games and, like, discussing in group chats or whatever, it's really nice to know that people are out there supporting you, because in the end you don't really, there will always be people cheering you on that you don't know about, but if you don't know about them, well, it doesn't really help you, does it?
No, very true. And at the start of this year you signed up with the darts manufacturer Loxley, and I read somewhere that you've always used a set of Wes Newton darts. So have you got your own custom set now from Loxley? Did you make any changes to the setup that you had before?
Yes, I've got a set of custom darts. We designed them together. They're not like copycats of the old darts, but they've got the same measurement, so they're same length and same weight. And I've designed them with a few thoughts in mind. For example, the old Wes Newton darts had how do you call them? Verticular cuts.
Yeah.
I thought about it, and I'm thinking that doesn't really make sense, because I always want to hold the dart and throw the dart the exact same manner, and I can't really make sure of that if they're not all the same on every single ring. Yeah, and I've designed them in a way I really like. I've gotten them, well, I actually can't remember when I've gotten them, but I've played with them in the Super Series, and I've played well with them. I'm really getting used to them now, and I think they've really improved my game. It took me a little bit, but now I'm definitely, I feel that my A game is starting to be better with them. I didn't make any other changes. I've flipped around with flights a bit. I tried standard flights for a while. You know, I played these Robson flights. I'm not sponsored by them, but yeah, I've changed back to them by now. But yeah, that's only 0.1% of performance. It's more of a mental thing, I think. So yeah, I can't wait for them to be in production. It'll take a few months, but they'll be out next year, I think. But at the start of next year somewhere.
Well, we look forward to that. And you mentioned the Super Series as well a few weeks ago. A lot more of our listeners will have seen you on the Modus League. It's a competition that's growing in popularity, and for players as well wanting to get a chance to play in it. Is it something that you've had your eye on for a while, trying to get that invite?
Well, yeah, I've thought about if they would ever invite me. I didn't know if being being big on Twitter helped a bit. It probably does in retrospect because my posts garnered a lot of attention and interaction, like more than even though Fallon was playing a week after me, and I was quite impressed that my videos got more Twitter likes than hers. But well, I don't know how much I thought about it, but I was really happy to get the invite. Somewhere down summer, John Locken messaged me from the PDC Europe on Facebook, actually, I think, and asked me if I wanted to play in it. And I was like, yeah, sure. And we discussed it and when it would be, and he sent me a contract to sign it. Was looking forward to it for a few months, and really glad it turned out well. Made finals night, didn't really expect that, to be honest, but it's always a good thing, exceeding expectations.
Definitely, and it looked like you enjoyed the experience of the Modus League as well. And we've got to mention your attire as well. The shirts you wear, they make you stand out. Probably one of the most well-dressed players that there is out there. Do your shirts, do they all come from the same place? Is there a certain brand that you go to for them?
So yeah, last year in late summer, or might have been autumn already, I thought about changing my attire because I was always wearing these classical dart shirts and I didn't really like them. I just went with them because I had to wear something that adheres to the rules. And I thought about why not just wear a proper shirt that has a collar on it, that's allowed, and it looks better to me at least. So I went to the local place that sells shirts and bought two of them, and they were from the same brand. Then I've got one shirt from my granddad, my late granddad. I got that because it was in his wardrobe and it fit me. And then I've got one from another brand that I bought on Amazon once. And then for Q School this year, I knew I had to get 7 shirts, so I bought 3 more from the same brand that I bought the first 2 of because I knew they fit me well. It's not really that. They should sponsor me. Really, I should give them. I should write them an email or something.
Definitely should. And talk to us about the nickname as well, the Turtle. Where did that come from?
Sadly, I really have to think of a proper story to that, like a fun story. It's just I made my Twitter in 2017, and I just couldn't think of a good name, so I just put the nickname my dad calls me sometimes, which is Dutsy, and then 180, and because I'm a darts player, and every darts player has to have 180 in their social media handle. That's a rule in the DRA. And then I just put Turtles because I like turtles. That's pretty much it. And then people started calling me the Turtle, and they just kept saying it. And at some point, I went with it, and I actually like it because, as I've said, I do like turtles, and I think it's not as corny as some of the other animal nicknames, which always have to be so fierce and aggressive. I'm not a dangerous predator. I'm just a turtle.
Well, we're fans of it, and a few more before we let you go. The attention turns to the Super League starting on your birthday Tuesday next week, and last year you were a wild card. You came so close to making the quarterfinals, as you mentioned. Those performances last year, they've got you an automatic spot in the field this year. So how do you feel going into it this time? Do you feel more confident and with more expectations, or, as you say, is the goal just to try and make that last 8 this time and make those improvements?
Yeah, well, kind of both, because I'm definitely going in with more expectations, because last year I didn't have any at all. I just really wanted to get through my first group, which is the group of 6, and you have to finish 4th, because that grants you automatic qualification for next year. And I did that, and I had no expectations at all in the second group stage. And this year, the second group stage doesn't exist. We have a last 16 knockout after the first group stage. So definitely going through that first group is a main goal again, but I'm feeling very confident in achieving that. Probably, if that comes back to haunt me, so what? I think that's a realistic assessment. And then it's just a knockout. It's last 16, quarterfinals, semifinals. It's 4 games. yeah, it depends on who I'm playing and how they're playing. But in the end, if you're a little bit lucky, you can just grab a world spot. If I play my best game, I know I can beat anybody there. I like my group as well. I've played most of the people in the Super League. Apart from those in my group, for some reason, I've got the most unknown group to me. I've never played Ruprecht. I've never played Liam Mendelorens. But for example, those two and Andre Valga. Of course, he's played on the world stage when I was a kid watching. Playing those people is probably a bit more exciting than playing others who are just as good but don't have a nice ring to it. I'll probably enjoy those matches more, so I'm happy with my group.
Excellent. And just lastly, beyond next week, have you had time to plan ahead for 2024? Have you set any targets or goals? Where would you like to be, I guess, this time next year?
Yeah, last year, round about the Super League time, I've made a small list with a few set goals, and I've achieved most of them. I didn't achieve the one qualifying for another Euro Tour, but I hope next year the PDC Europe doesn't set a whole block of European Tour qualifiers on the weekend of a Dev Tour weekend. It should be possible. If one of those guys doing the time scheduling is listening, please. So one goal I've definitely set myself for next year is qualifying for the UK Open. I'm not going to those Riley's qualifiers because I don't want to play in pubs. I've got enough of that down, but like Dev Tour top whatever is enough for it. I think 8 places, and because the Dev Tour is loaded with tour card holders at the top, it's probably like top 16. That's enough. I finished 26th this year, and I was in the top 20 for quite some time. And if I improve just a little bit and get a few more deep runs, I've made 3 quarterfinals there this year. If I just win 2 more games there, I've got a good chance. I think playing in a major is a good goal for then, of course, 2025, but doing that qualification next year.
Well, David, good luck for all those goals next year. It's a pleasure to get you on the show and talk to you, and we wish you all the best as well for the Super League next
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks again to David for joining us now. Moving on to the Pro Tour this week, we've seen the last 2 Players' Championships take place in Barnsley, and the field for the Players' Championship finals at the end of the month in Minehead is confirmed, as is the draw too. So which first round ties have caught your eye straight away?
I mean, there's 2 obvious ones that I'm just going to mention, but I'm not going to discuss because we discussed these players so much. You know, Callan Ritz and Michael Van Geuren jumps right off the page. Chris Dobie, who I talked about on the last question, against Raymond van Barneveld. Those 2 are both high-profile matchups of a Northeastern player against a Dutch world champion. I'm looking forward to both of those. But I want to talk 4 other matches that might not look the part, but are the part. And like we've done for the last few tournaments, I'm going to do one from each quarter. So starting with the first quarter, Stephen Bunting against Mickey Mansell. Bunting, of the 64 players who qualified for this, is 12th in averages this year in the Players' Championship events. That's not surprising. We've been talking about Bunting, and it seems like Bunting's even upped his game since the summer break, since he's put those grams on his starts. But I want to talk about Mickey Mansell, because Mansell, yeah, it always looked like he was going to qualify for the World Championships. He was a little outside it early in the year, but he kept pushing in, and it never seemed like it was in doubt. Seemed like he was playing well enough, and we know he's a tough player to play against. You know he's going to get the results if he needs them. But look at what he's done since the 27th of September. 21 matches in those Players' Championship events. He's averaged over his seasonal average in 14 of them. That's 2/3 of them, with wins over Jan van Veen, Ryan Joyce, Josh Rock, Pikachu, Ryan Searle. He's made a semifinal in the last 16. Mickey Mansell right now is playing at a very high level, a very good level. And he has every chance to beat Bunting and get a couple wins in this tournament. This is a tough matchup, and the winner of this is going to fancy themselves to kick on from there. In the next quarter, let's go against Rob Cross, the former world champion, against Cameron Menzies. Menzies, I'll start with just, the overall averages this year. It's 9th against 20th. So, 2 top 20 players, excluding players who didn't qualify again for this event. 2 top 20 players and averages that have to play each other in the first round. We know what Rob Cross has done. He's also won on the Euro Tour this year, but he's reestablished himself in that upper echelon of the game if that was ever in doubt. But Cameron Menzies, why is he here playing as a 40-something seed if he's 20th in averages? It's his inability to win with his B and C game. A fairly routine amount of times this year, he's averaged more than 4 points below his seasonal average, 14 times in 58. You look at the players around him, they're at a similar clip of number of times. But what's done Cameron Menzies in is when he's dropping below his average by, 4 points or more, he's not finding ways to win. He doesn't win with his B and C game. He's 2-12 in those 14 matches in Players Championship events when he goes 4 points or more below his average. Compare it to the players right around him in averages. Martin Schindler 6-7 in those matches. Joe Cullen 6-10. Michael Smith, who's just behind him in the averages, is 7-6, has a winning record when he's below his average by more than 4 points. That's pretty impressive. Even Christoph Ratajski, who struggled this year when he drops below his average, is 4-13. That's still winning twice as often as Cameron Menzies does. If Cameron Menzies brings his A game, this could be a absolute thrilling match. Menzies needs to learn, though, how to win with his B and C game. That's what's doing him in right now. From the bottom half, I'll mention quickly Pietreko against Kristen Kist. Kist has come off the boil as of late, but maybe now that the pressure of resecuring his tour card is no longer front of his mind, maybe he can relax and get back to what he was doing in July and September. I don't need to say anything about Pikachu. He's been phenomenal. Ricardo Pietreko has been one of the best players in the world over the last couple of months. And then finally, Michael Smith against Richard Veenstra. I want to talk about Veenstra because I want to just show how quietly he's had a really good year. First of all, over the last 25 matches, in 17 of them, he's been above his seasonal average. That's more than 2/3 of those matches. He's been above his seasonal average. I mean, he's playing better now. Wins over Ross Smith, Josh Rock, Damon Hedda, Martin Schindler, Luke Woodhouse with a 105 average. Veenstra threw to beat him. Johnny Clayton during those 25 matches. But the more impressive thing is how tough his draw has been this year. And he's not lost until the final event against Cam Crabtree to anyone who you can't say is an accomplished player. In the first 21 Players Championship events this year, the person he lost to has made a televised final in the PDC. Not once did he lose to someone who had not made a televised final. Granted, 2 of those were World Youth Finals, Ricky Evans and Josh Rock. One was the World Cup in Willie O'Connor. But 21 consecutive matches, you had to be a televised finalist if you were going to beat him. The one that ended it was Ricardo Pietreko, who ended up winning a Euro Tour after that. Then he lost to Chizzy, Kim Huybrechts, Andrew Gilding, and Damon Hedda before losing to a World Championship semifinalist in Mario van den Bogarde in the 27th event, and then another televised finalist in Steve Lennon and Pikachu again. 29 events. Pikachu and a World Championship semifinalist were the only non-PDC major finalists who had beaten him. Then he lost to Cam Crabtree. That's just phenomenal. You have to be great to beat Richard Veenstra. But Michael Smith is.
That is why you are the darts statistician. Some great picks in there. And with this Players' Championship finals, we know it's a tournament that is going to throw up some interesting first round, second round ties very early on. With how the seeding works, it is based on the top 64 players from the 30 Players' Championship events. And we mentioned earlier there's going to be no Peter Wright this year. He didn't win enough money. The same for Nathan Aspinall, the World Match Play champion. He's not made the cut. Both of them skipped a lot of the events this year on the floor. So that, got to say, they weren't the only ones to do that. We've seen Michael Van Gogh and Michael Smith. They've played practically half the events each. So they go into this as, I think, Van Gogh into the 40th seed. Michael Smith, I think he's around the top 32, around that range. So seedings that we're not often used to seeing with these players. But it does make for an interesting draw. And I'll pick out 2 ties from each half of the draw. And there's not many games that pit 2 top 32 players in the world against each other in this draw, but we do have one with Kim Huybrechts and Martin Schindler, and they are, on paper, this should be the closest game in the draw because they are the 32nd and 33rd seeds in the draw, and this is one that I think could go all the way. We've seen Kim earlier on this year get back to winning ways, winning a title. We've seen Martin Schindler the last time the PDC went to Minehead for the UK Open, got to a quarter final, and since then we've seen him make the last 8 again at the World Grand Prix. So he's another player that's knocking on the door of making an even deeper run in these major events. And the other tie that I've got from that top half that caught my eye, okay, it's probably not a tie that's pitting two players in unbelievable form against each other, but Josh Rock and Roby John Rodriguez. You've got Josh coming in as the 5th seed, made 4 finals on the floor this year, didn't win any of them, despite averaging 99 twice, 95 in there, a 91 average as well. But all those finals came against former major winners. You had Van Gerwen, Clayton, Price and Anderson in there. So we had some tough matchups in the finals, but still to make 4 finals takes some doing. And we are still waiting for that real breakthrough run on TV for Josh. He's lost in the first round of the match play, the Grand Prix, the European Championship at the weekend. And I think he'll like the draw against Roby John because he's a player that we've not seen hit the same heights as he did last year. But on the flip side with Roby, he'll want to put on a show with this because he's not going to be in the Grand Slam. Those qualifiers took place today, and when we're talking, and despite leading Ryan Searle 4-1 in that final round, missed match starts, ended up losing 5-4. So for a player that's currently not in the World Championships as well, he'll want to make his mark on this event, not because, well, it's a chance to really put some prize money on the board, but also get some momentum going into the tour card holder qualifier on the Monday, which follows this event. And lastly, as for the bottom half of the draw, I'll go for 2 games that are next to each other. And you mentioned one of them, the Ricardo Pietreczko Christian Kiss game. Ricardo, we just spoke about him impressing at the European Championship. His opponent, Christian Kiss, missed out on that tour card on the Challenge Tour at the start of this week, but he's made this tournament without a tour card, and he's also going to be at Ali Pali via that Pro Tour list, which shows you just how well he's played this year. And so that's going to be an interesting tie. And underneath that, those 2 in the draw, you've got Damon Heta and Jules Van Dongen. Damon Heta, he's won 2 titles on the floor this year, made another final as well. He comes in as the 3rd seed. Last year, he was the 5th seed and went out in the first round, so he's going to want to make up for that. But I want to touch on Jules Van Dongen, someone that you've spoken about as well. Comes in as the 62nd seed, but I don't think there's many players that are playing better than him right now. You look at his last 25 matches in Players' Championships, and 17 of them he's averaged 95 plus. And you look back to the previous matches that he's played, the 31 before then on the floor this year, just 2 of them he averaged 95 plus. So he's going to go to Minehead, to Ali Pali. It's giving him a lifeline of saving his tour card. He's going to need some results in either of those events or both to make up probably an extra 20 grand. But if he can bring the game that he's been playing more often than not on the floor for these last 2 months onto the stage, I think he's going to cause Damon Heta and many other players problems as well.
Well, we'll see how the Players' Championship Finals comes in a few weeks, but let's start talking about the World Championships because it's now a little over a month away, and the Pro Tour qualifiers for Ali Pali virtually confirmed as well. Not 100% confirmed because there's still a chance that Roby John Rodriguez could make the finals of the Players' Championship Finals and knock Keegan Brown out. There might be a couple other possibilities as well among players if they win the Players' Championship Finals, but it is still the chance. But as things currently stand, Keegan Brown snuck into the field. A lot of big names missed out. Alan Suter missed out by a couple legs if he had qualified through winning. Won through the qualifiers today, as of when we're recording for the Grand Slam. So a lot of big names that missed out. Whose absence from either the top 32 overall or the Pro Tour top 32 most surprised you?
Well, I think I've got to start with the player that you just mentioned there. Alan Suter is the highest ranked player currently missing from the field for Ali Pali, the world number 33. And you look at his first 2 years in the PDC, made the last 16 at Ali Pali, 2 great runs there. And in between those 2 runs, the quarterfinals of the Grand Slam. But it's been a difficult 3rd season for Suits. If you go off the stats, our friends at Darts Oracle, then his overall season by season average has been in decline. That first season, 2021, he had a 93.07 average. Last year, 91.81, and this year, 90.48. And okay, the first year he was a full point above the tour average. Last year it dropped, but he was only around a 0.5 off the tour average, whereas this year his average has dropped again, but he's almost a full 2 points off that running tour average. And those are the fine margins that can make all the difference. So a player that's very highly ranked, but as things stand, is not going to be at the World Championship. And as you say, there's a few big names missing from that, either the top 32 or the Pro Tour top 32, the likes of Mervyn King, Vincent van der Voort, Adrian Lewis. Okay, he's been absent from the tour for most of the year. Also Mensur Suljovic as well. And these are players that have been on long consecutive runs of making world championships. Mensur Suljovic, he's been in the last 10. Adrian Lewis, the last 18. Vincent van der Voort, the last 22, dating back to playing at Lakeside 2002. And even longer than that, Mervyn King, 27 years, his world championship debut 1997, and he's been in a world championship every year since then. But aside from those bigger names, there's two younger players that at the start of the year you'd have expected them to be qualified by now. Ryan Meikle and someone that we've already mentioned, Roby John Rodriguez. And you look back to last year, both had seasons where you could tell they had kicked on. They were making strides. They were on that upward curve. We had Roby John make a Euro Tour final, get to the World Match Play for the first time, and even beat Johnny Clayton on his debut at Blackpool. And Ryan Meikle's progress wasn't as headline grabbing, but you could still see he was making those strides. He made a Euro Tour quarter final for the first time, got to the European Championships as well. And as fans watching and following the game, I guess all these players that are currently missing from the field, it has made that tour card holder qualifier after the Players' Championship finals that much more exciting and interesting to follow, because we know there's going to be 4 places up for grabs this year. So there's an extra spot in the field to get there. There's an extra chance for these players to get in, and it's going to be a massively important day and potentially career-defining, potentially career-ending. You look at someone like Richie Burnett, who we've had on the show, and when he won back his tour card, he said that this was his last dance. He wasn't going to try and go back to Q School again after this, and we saw him make the quarterfinals of the UK Open early this year, but he's someone that's going to have to go to that qualifier to essentially save his tour card, because, okay, the qualifier, if he wins it, that's not going to be enough. He's going to have to get some results at Ali Pali, but that's going to be the first step for him keeping that tour card. And it's a similar scenario for a lot of other players. You look at someone like Darius Labanauskas, Scott Waits, Ted Evans, Jeff Smith, Devon Peterson, the list goes on. There's a lot of names in there, a lot of names that are well established in the PDC that are now going to have to go to that qualifier in a few weeks' time to get to the World Championship.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough qualifier. But I'm going to focus on, starting with the players from the top 30 that missed out on the top 32, meaning, the players in that next 16 or 20 in the rankings that didn't qualify. There's 4 names that jump out, not necessarily because they're surprising, but because they've been in the World Championship for the last decade without break. Mervyn King, 27 in a row. Vincent van der Voort, 22 in a row. Adrian Lewis, and I know he ended up basically taking the year off. He hasn't played since March, but 18 consecutive World Championships. And Mensur Suljovic, 10 in a row, 15 of the last 16 as well. For King and van der Voort, those do include some from the BDO, but they're over a decade just in the PDC as well. Those streaks are now all in jeopardy. Mervyn King was playing some decent darts these past couple weeks. He'd been struggling all year, but starting to come into form at the end of the year, but didn't qualify for any Euro Tours, didn't do pretty much anything for the first half of the year, first 2/3 of the year, and he's going to have to go through the PDPA qualifier. Vincent van der Voort was nowhere even near qualifying and has really struggled, averaging in the 80s this year. His game just has gone to pieces. Mensur Suljovic, I'm going to come back to Mensur in a second, but only got to 1 Euro Tour. That's, I think, what did him in. Came close to qualifying for the Players' Championship finals, but just didn't do enough consistently enough. Almost got himself in with a semifinal earlier this year, but then wasn't getting results. But let's head over and look overall on that Pro Tour Order of Merit. And there's 3 players that jump out because in terms of averages, they were in the top 64 this year. And yes, there's always going to be a few players from outside the top 64 who qualify, and there's going to be a few players inside the top 64 who miss out. But overall, if you're in the top 64 averages for the year, you're probably going to qualify through one of these 64 spots. You're playing on average in the upper half of the tour card holders. That's usually going to get you there. But for Boris Kursmar, 42nd in averages, he didn't do it. And why didn't he get in? Well, it's what he's done since that summer break. In 22 matches since the plays come back near the end of August, he's only averaged above his seasonal average 7 times. More than 2/3 of the times, he's dropped below. You look at the early part of the year, 6 board finals from the first 12 events. It looked like he was going to qualify no problem. for the World Championships. But over the last 18 events, he only managed twice to make it to the board final. That is not going to get it done, and that's why he fell short. He is in the Players' Championship finals, and maybe he can get some momentum out of that event. Maybe he can get some confidence back. But he's going to need it because he still has work to do to save his tour card. And overall, he's a player who should save his tour card. I did tip him at the start of the year to win his first title this year. I mean, I guess it could happen in Minehead, but it's looking like it might have to wait till next year if he can even save his tour card. But then two more players in the top 64. One who I mentioned overall, and in top 64 in averages, I should say. One who I mentioned for the rankings, Mensur Suljovic. And I want to mention something about him because he's 60th in averages this year in Players' Championship events. But in his last 21 matches, 16 of those were above his seasonal average. Suljovic is not playing like he was 5 years ago, but he's playing some pretty good darts right now. But of those 16 matches where he was above his season average, he only won half of them. That was the problem. He was playing well for the last couple months, but he couldn't get over the line. And then finally, Andy Bolton, like Mensur Suljovic, just a spot behind him in the averages. In his last 19 matches, 15 of them above his season average. So another player who's lifted his game, but like Mensur, left too much to do too late and did too little of it. And that's why he is having to go to the PDPA qualifier.
We'll be back in a moment to look back at the Challenge Tour and also look at the draw for Lakeside. But before then, we were talking about the World Championship in the PDC. Let's hear from a player that will be involved at Ali Pali. Here's our chat with Norman Madhoo. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Order of Merit winner of the very first CDLC Tour, Norman Madhoo. Thanks for the time, Norman. How are you doing?
Hey, Alex. Thank you. I'm doing fine.
Glad to hear it. And it's been around 3 weeks since the final CDLC Tour weekend in Chile, where you won a title, you topped the Order of Merit, you got that return to Alexandra Palace for the PDC World Championship. I'm guessing now it's fully sunk in that you're going to be making that return to what is the biggest tournament in darts?
Yes. After 13-year absence from it.
Yeah, you mentioned 13 years since your last appearance. It's going to be your fourth World Championship, the first one back in 2004. You played twice at Ali Pali, 2010, 2011. So 13 years on, what does it mean to have qualified again?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I was trying to achieve that, before, but it was kind of difficult. I made it to some of the qualifiers, and it was a tough challenge. We had Diego Portello. He won most of it. I mean, since 2010, and I think in 2016 we started back with the qualifiers in South America. I didn't attend a few, but it's nice to be back. And now darts are getting bigger in South America, and it's important that we support it and try to make it bigger there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come back to that as well. And it's the first time that we've had you on our show as a guest. So let's circle back to the beginning. Where did it all start for you in darts, and how long have you been playing the game for now?
Yeah, it's all started back in Guyana when I was about 18. A long time ago. It's about 35, 40 years. So I used to play a lot of cricket, and I could not gotten into a team. So I saw a few guys, my neighbor, playing darts, and I said, okay, this is a one-person sport, an individual sport. And then I said, you know what, I can take it to the highest level I can. I just went off and I started playing. And I won qualifiers in Barbados in 2004 and made it to the Alexandra Palace. That was in Guyana, Circus Tavern in 2004. And then I continued. I played in the U.S., compete there, and then I later moved to the U.S. 2012. And I compete all around, in tournaments.
Looking back at your time in darts, then you talked about qualifying for that first World Championship almost 20 years ago, now back at the Circus Tavern as it was then. What do you remember about that debut coming over to the UK to play in that event?
It was nothing. I haven't seen anything like that. You know, it was fantastic. I mean, what I remember is that walking in, people wanted autograph. You know, I never signed an autograph in my life. But, you know, that's one thing that stuck out for me.
Excellent. And a few years later then, you were back playing in the World Championships, Alexandra Palace. You played there back-to-back years as well, and obviously the venues are a lot different. Circus Tavern's quite a small venue. Ali Pali, it's got a lot bigger. What were those experiences like playing in the bigger venue?
Yeah, I mean, with the time difference, you know, the years difference and the crowd growing, Darts was actually on the upward movement there, and you know, the crowds are getting bigger, and you know, it's all excitement.
And we had your World Cup partner Sudesh Fitzgerald on the show earlier this year, and he said, we're talking about the World Cup now, he expected you to win that qualifier to get into the tournament. How were you feeling before it? Were you as confident as your partner that you'd win?
I know what he's capable of, and barring the accident, you know, he was just coming back, and I know he could, you know, what he's capable of doing, and we did win the cup qualifier easily. The finals, we had, I think, won the semi-final match was tough, but the final was easy. We just won it, and you know. But I think next year we'll be more prepared to go back and defend our title there.
Definitely, yeah. The semi-final went all the way to the decider, but as you say, the final was quite a one-sided game in the end. What did it mean to you to win that qualifier and with you and Sudesh be the first two players from Guyana to play in the World Cup?
It's always fantastic to represent your nation, you know. And we just not representing Guyana. We actually, you know, we got whole of South America behind us too, you know. So that's the great thing. We have a large contingent behind us.
And Sudesh, he told us the story about how he first got into darts. It was you that saw him doing the scoring, and you said, "Oh, he should get to play too, throw some darts." So, what are your earliest memories of Sudesh and him taking up darts?
Yeah, there was the scoring was the chalking scoring matches. That's how we started. So you get the mathematics right from the start. And he was one that, you know, he showed interest. We had a few others, but he followed up and he stuck with me, and you know, I brought him up basically.
And you mentioned he had his accident last year, recovering from that to get to this point. You've been supporting him throughout that time as well. So how did it feel to go through that journey with him, your friend Sudesh, and get to go up on that World Cup stage together a few months ago?
Yeah, that was fantastic. You know, to be in the position, you know where he was, to come back and be on the stage 6 months after, 6-8 months after. It was pretty good, man. Feels good.
Yeah, it's incredible to see. And after you two got back from the World Cup in Germany, what was the reaction like back home in Guyana? Has the interest in darts grown off the back of it?
Yeah, we started the Foreign Links Club that we, tried to get youths involved and, you know, get more younger players and make some donations and some kind of, you know, that kind of stuff going on there right now.
Sudesh, she said to us last time there needs to be more investment in darts in Guyana to help it progress. Do you agree? What do you think needs to be done to improve the dart scene back home?
Yeah, I've been around darts a while in Guyana, and yes, I think they don't see it as a sport, which is the government level. So I hopefully with these exposure they're getting now, that, you know, somebody would take notice of it and start putting some efforts into development, you know, because you need boards, you need equipment, we try to do it in schools, try to take it to the school so the kids could start with the mathematics and get it right, you know.
Let's hope so. Well, let's get back to more recent times then. And after the World Cup, the focus was on the new CDLC tour, which has been brought in for this year. 2 weekends of events, one in Costa Rica, one in Chile. as it was the first year of the tour, these events being put on, how were the events received amongst your fellow players?
The turnouts are good, and the level is getting better. And hopefully in a few years we will have more tours, additional tours that, if you can make it to the ones close by, it's a whole continent here, so it's hard to travel to each and every one. So if we have more tours spread across, then I think we'll have more participation, or more people involved in the trials,
Yeah, that'd be great to see. And so you've done pretty well in the 2 weekends. You won one of the 2 events in Costa Rica, then you followed it up with another title in Chile. What was the moment like when you found out you couldn't be caught at the top of that Order of Merit and that you had won that spot in the World Championship?
Well, it was pretty close because Sadish went into Chile. We went into Chile with him leading with 30 points, and I'm 22. And I think he got knocked out with top 16, and I ended up winning the first event. And we both got knocked out on the top 16 of the second event. But if he had gone one more round, he would have been the person to represent. And the Arta from Brazil, who won the second event, he did not play in Costa Rica. So I was clear winner. Even before the tournament ended, I knew that I had the spot.
And I remember when we spoke to Sudesh last time, you just qualified for the World Cup, and he said, yeah, it's great getting to the event, but now there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that you can get over and play in the event. That one was in Germany. Obviously, the Worlds are over here in the UK. What's the situation like in terms of getting that visa to be able to come over here next month?
Actually, I'm in the States now, so it's not a problem for me to travel, so good with that.
Excellent. Well, when you make that walk out at Ali Pali again just 4 months before your 60th birthday, what is it about the game of darts that's kept you playing all this time, kept you practicing and competing to try and get to these big events?
It's something that you just want to improve on. I just want to win, It's there all the time. I don't know, it kept me playing for 40 years.
And it's still a month before the World Championship. You said you're in America at the moment. What's the plan between now and then? Are you hoping to maybe travel over a little bit earlier, get accustomed to the UK again, playing some events? What have you got lined up to prepare for Ali Pali?
Yeah, actually, I got my tickets already. I'm booked for the 13th. It starts on the 15th, but I would not know when I'll be playing until the 29th of November when the schedule is out. So I got a few days there, but I will be probably doing some tournaments in the States here. And actually I have to travel to Guyana, so I will get some practice with Sadish there in 2 weeks' time. So I'll go spend a week and a half, get some practice there, some work done too, and then head back to the US, and then I'll be flying out on the 13th of December.
Excellent. Well, Norman, it's a pleasure to get you on the show. We appreciate you taking the time, and we hope all the prep for the next month or so goes well before the World Championship, and wish you all the best for that return to Alexandra Palace in December as well.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks again to Norman for joining us now, continuing our look back at the last week in darts and over to the Challenge Tour, which came to an end for 2023, and Berry Van Peer and Owen Bates claiming the top 2 spots in the Challenge Tour. How do you think they're both going to fare on the tour next year?
I think both of them have the potential to have a good year. And one thing, that we've seen the Challenge Tour players usually do fairly well, because if you're going to win the Challenge Tour, you've probably been near the top of the Order of Merit for some time, and therefore you've been in those top-up spots for the Pro Tour events for most of the year. So you've gotten that experience. Berry Van Peer, he had that big weekend, and that shot him up. He missed a lot of the Players' Championship events earlier in the year, but he's been on the tour before. He knows what it's like. He's qualified for the World Championships through the Pro Tour before. He's been around. I'm not too worried that he'll he won't be ready to hit the ground running. He has the experience. Owen Bates, we know less about. And that was a fantastic run on that final day. He needed a semifinal to get his tour card to jump John Henderson, and he did it. And he came through 3 last leg deciders on that run as well. Some really tough stuff. And he's been playing in all but 2 of the Players' Championship events this year. He missed the first 2. He's played every one since then. But he hasn't fully found his stuff yet. He's played all right, but when he's gone against top-tier players, he hasn't won. In 22 matches this year against top 32 players, he's only won 4 of them, 4 and 18. Compare that to Barry Vanphere. He's only played 8, but he's won 3 of them. Owen Bates has not beaten those top players, and 3 of those wins were early in the year. He did beat James Wade recently. He's going to need to lift his game, and if he's going to really do well next year, but he is getting that experience. I think it's going to take some time. I don't know what to expect from him next year. I think it will be something where as the year progresses, we'll see more of him doing well. Obviously, to make the semifinals and the last event to win your tour card shows the bottle that he has, shows the nerve that he has. And that's something that will hold him in good stead next year. But I don't want to predict too much from him yet because I haven't seen enough of him lifting his game against the top players yet. I think as he plays them more often, maybe he will. But until he does, I want to hold out. And then for Barry Vanphere, the only thing going against him is that he has been struggling a bit as of late on the Pro Tour. His last 8 matches were below 90 averages, but I know he's better than that. I think he knows he's better than that. And I think he's going to come in with confidence that, when he dropped off the tour a few years ago with arthritis, he didn't have. He's now a player who can win tournaments. Yes, it's Challenge Tour that he's won them at, but there's a lot of good players there, and he won quite a few of them. I think he's a player who's going to be, from the go, a force to be reckoned with, and one of those players who's going to be in that conversation to qualify for the World Championships, Players' Championship finals, and maybe even a Euro Tour if he does well in the qualifiers, because I think he has that experience and I think he has that belief again.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that. And I'll start with Barry Vanphere, who ended up winning the Challenge Tour at a canter. He finished more than $3,500 clear of second place. He won 4 titles, and just those 4 titles alone, that prize money would have been enough to finish top of the Order of Merit. But he is someone that, as you say, we've seen lose their tour card at the end of last year, and the double disappointment, if you like, of then failing to win it back at Q-School, but then turning that disappointment into a positive and really going out and embracing all the opportunities that are out there for players without a tour card. And in the end, his year has been so busy that he's even turned down playing in some of those Players' Championship events as a top-up player just to have a rest, just to take a weekend off. But he said to us on the show recently, just before that last Challenge Tour weekend, that he skipped one of those blocks of Players' Championships just because he could. He didn't have to worry about going to the events to get results for his ranking or to keep his tour card, which, of course, is a problem that is going to come back round next year and the year after, because these are the only events that he's going to play in. And when I look at it, Barry's position, it does remind me a little bit of Scott Williams last year. He was arguably the busiest man in darts last year. He was everywhere, and he even won a Players' Championship without a tour card and ended up not taking that tour card from the Challenge Tour because he made the top 64 without one. But he's come out and said on social media this year that getting a tour card has meant that he's not playing as often and he's not as clinical as he was the year before. So I guess the advantage for Barry is that he has had that tour card before. He knows what he's getting himself into. He has had that experience at hand from being on the tour before, whereas Scott, it was something completely new for him this year, just having that tour card for the first time. But at the same time, I think it is going to be a bit of an adjustment, spreading yourself out across lots of different tools and systems this year. You're now going to be honing in on the one, but I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for Barry Vanphere, because we have seen the quality that he's got on show, not just in the PDC, some of the events that he's played in, but also the events outside of that, the titles that he's been able to pick up. I think he's going to go into next year, regardless of the results that he gets at the Grand Slam, at the World Championship. I think he's going to go into next year with a lot of confidence behind him. And as for Owen Bates, the master, what a nickname that is, by the way, but he is going to be more of an unknown package. But as you touched on there, what a a run of results he put together in the end to get that tour card, to snatch it away from John Henderson, getting that semi-final in the last event. But you go back to the last event of the previous weekend, winning that title, which put him into contention. Then the final weekend, last 32, semi-final, last 32, runner-up, and more than half his prize money came in those last 6 events. And considering that he missed 4 of the events during the year as well, it was a very impressive run in there to beat out some established names, some former tour card holders. You look at the likes of John Henderson, Andy Bolton, Christian Kist, and some other young, hungry prospects as well. Cam Crabtree, Dom Taylor, 2 players that we do expect to see have tour cards sooner rather than later. So he's beaten out a lot of those players to get that tour card. And I think, yeah, like you said, he might need a little bit longer to get used to life on the tour. But from what we've seen, he does look like he has a solid game already. Most of the time, looking at the Players' Championship events, he's averaging around that 85 to 95 range. We are going to see him make that step up next year, but I think he is someone that can have that goal of making Ali Pali or making Minehead in that first year. I think that is a realistic goal for him, and I think a little bit of patience, that could be a key attribute for next year. But if he can look at it like he's not going to win as many games next year, but he's going to build a lot of experience, get a lot of that behind him, I think he's someone that's going to get used to it quicker than maybe some people might expect.
Well, something we also have to get used to is the WDF World Championships being back. A busy week saw the draw for the Lakeside made just the other day. It'll be at the beginning of December, the tournament. Are there any first or second round ties, though, that stand out for you?
Well, I'll start with the men's draw, and I think I heard Nick Roll say during the draw while it was being made that about how many debutants that you've got in this year, and similar to last year's WDF World Championship as well. And I think I've got it right in saying he said 30 of the men, they're going to be playing in a WDF World Championship at Lakeside for the first time. So I don't think that's including other World Championships like the PDC, but still that's a lot of the field that are going to be going into this event for the first time. And you look down that list of first round ties and even potential second round ties, and I don't think you can say with any certainty a prediction on how you think that game's going to go. So I think we are in for a lot of tight games in that first round. It is still a short race, best of 3 sets. It's very much a sprint to make that last 32 when you go up against one of the seeds, and the format is going to jump up to the best of 5 sets. And they're the games that you can get your teeth into a bit more. So for the men's, I'm going to focus on the potential second round ties, and starting off with last year's runner-up, Thibaut Tricol could face Leonard Gates, who is a top-up player for this event. He's a player that has benefited from a few names dropping out. They decided to pick the PDC World Championship over the Lakeside, so Leonard Gates has got that call-up via the rankings to play in this. And Tricol Gates, that is an exciting prospect in the last 32. And as is Andy Barton's, the number 1 seed against either Scott Marsh or Sebastian Białecki, who a player that we've seen make the last day of the UK Open last year. Very talented young player. If he can get past that first round, a clash with the WDF world number 1, I think that makes for an intriguing matchup and a very early test of the top seeds credentials. So I can see this tournament going down a similar route to last year, where we had a lot of new faces for darts fans to watch and see play for the first time. And I think that men's draw is going to be wide open again. You put players like Andy Barton's, Neil Duff, the defending champion, Thibaut Tricol, Jelle Klaassen making his Lakeside return, Wesley Placier, who won the World Masters last year. And there's some dark horses in there as well, Chris Lamb, Danny Lauby Jr. I don't think there's going to be a clear-cut favourite for this men's event, which makes, again, for another interesting event to follow. But as for the women's draw, all eyes are going to be on Bo Grieve. She is the defending champion. She decided to play Lakeside, try and defend her title, and gave up that chance of a second visit to Ali Pali, although I'm sure she's going to qualify for that event many times over the next few years. So it's not a huge opportunity that she's missed out on, but she's got Lorraine Hyde or Laura Turner in the second round. And that first round matchup is an intriguing one because you could see that one going either way. And as for the second round ties, I'm looking forward to seeing Lisa Ashton back on that Lakeside stage. It's her last Women's World Championship 2020 when she made the final against Mikuru Suzuki. You've got to go back another year since the last time she played a World Championship at Lakeside. So it's good to see her back in the field. She's got either Kim Mitchell or Priscilla Steenbergen in that last 16. And some people might be looking at that women's draw saying it's going to be Bo and Lisa in the final, but I see enough names in there that we are going to see maybe a surprise or two during the week. There are going to be a few ladies that are going to want to have their say. And I wouldn't discount a Rhiannon O'Sullivan or an Eileen de Graaf, or even players that are starting out in the first round from going on a deep run in this event and maybe causing an upset. And you've only got to look at last year's runner-up, Kirsty Hutchinson. She's starting out in the first round against Mayumi Uchi, the Japanese player who won through the qualifier, which is a tough opening game for her. But I think wherever you look in this draw, I think we are in for 9 days of discovering a lot of new talent that we haven't seen before. And perhaps there are talents already out there, but they are going to be able to show it on that bigger platform now with the Lakeside.
It's hard for me to get excited about a lot of these matchups because there's so many players in here. I don't even know who they are. And in a way, that's exciting to get to see players that I've never seen before. But on the other hand, even the players I have heard of, I'm not all that excited to see many of them. It's a really overall disappointing field. If you look at some of the players who've qualified, I don't mean this to insult the players. I mean this to insult the event, that there are players who I have not seen any record of them playing since Q School this year. David Pallett hasn't played anything. Neither has JB Lewis. These are players who qualified when this event was supposed to be at the beginning of the year. And then it gets pushed back by 10 months. And now all of a sudden, what's the point of going and spending all this money traveling the world to get ranking points if you're already here? And it just leads to so many question marks about so many of the players. And I mean, maybe that's a reason to be interested. Maybe that's a reason to watch. Where all are the games of some of these players? Beyond that, some of the first round ties on the men's draw that jump out at me. Mike Gillett's a player who we've not seen much of historically, but I think is a very good player going against the young German Liam Mandel-Lawrence we've seen on the Euro Tour this year. I think that could be an interesting matchup. I think Mike Gillett's a player who, if he brings his game, could have a good tournament. And I think that could be a tricky first round tie. Some of the potential second round matchups, if Leonard Gates gets past the Kiwi Brian Corbett, he goes against the reigning runner up Thibaut Trickle. Whoever wins that match could win the title. Leonard Gates has been the best player in the senior circuit this year. Thibaut Trickle's the reigning runner up. I think that's a really tough second round matchup for whoever gets to it. We haven't seen Peter Machin in quite some time, but potentially going against James Richardson or Christian Godel in the second round. When we've seen Peter Machin in the World Trophy back in the BDO, he won the title one year and made the semifinals the next. He's been a player who, when he gets into these televised events held in the UK, he wins matches. That's a really good potential matchup. And then James Hurl against the winner of Jordan Brooks and Dennis Nielsen. Dennis Nielsen, I think, is a very good player. Don't know as much about Jordan Brooks, but I think that could be a good match. Over on the women's side, you mentioned Bo Greaves. I think that's not an easy draw. Lorraine Hyde is a fairly good player. Laura Turner on her day is a very good player. If Bo Greaves isn't ready, she could lose that match, but she should be better than either of them. Potential second round as well, Anka Zylstra against Almanata Fajardo. I think Fajardo is a player who will keep getting better, but Paula Murphy, an American, we haven't seen much about her, but she's been dominant in the North American events for quite some time now. So it'll be interesting to see how she does. Mayumi Auchi in the first round against Kirsty Hutchinson. Auchi is a player who we didn't know much about before the World Masters a couple years ago, had a great week. I think she's a good player. Kirsty Hutchinson also a good player. I think that could be a tight matchup as Kirsty Hutchinson tries to match what she did almost 2 years ago now and make it back to the finals. So there's some interesting ties, but right now, I don't know. I'm not all that excited because there's just so many question marks about why are some of these players here. Anything else for this week?
Well, as always, we've got a few thank yous to end the show. Thank you to our guests, to David and Norman for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner and Condor Darts. Thanks to Condor for sponsoring our question of the week. Thank you to Darts Corner for their continued support. They are the world's #1 online darts retailer, so go and check them out. Thank you to everyone for listening. a later than usual release this week for the show, but on the plus side, it does mean that you won't have to wait as long for next week's episode to drop, and we'll be back with our Grand Slam of Darts preview. Hopefully we'll have one or two guests for you to hear from as well. So until then, on what is going to be a rare quiet weekend at this time of the year, make sure that if you can find any, that you enjoy the darts.
As Alex said, thanks to all of our guests and sponsors again. It's the best time of year. I'm not going to waste more of your time telling you to do anything, because why waste that time? It is almost Dartsmas, and there's just so much greatness that leads up to it. Enjoy the darts. Alex is right this time. In 2 months, though, we'll be back to hanging tight. I'll be back to being right.